Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Greetings from Belgrade this time. Welcome to another round of monthly briefings on internet governance and digital policy. This time we obviously cover September issues. As always, we have quite some inputs from different sides around Europe and the globe. I can briefly introduce, but you'll see them later and hear them in more details. Bjovan, Marilia, Arvin, Katarina, Marko, who will help us with the online facilitation and comments. So we can start immediately. Thank you again for coming. As you know, we firstly run through the events that have taken place in the previous month or in this current month in September. And as you can see, there was a number of, as always, interesting events. There is certainly more. We try to map as much as we can, and if we miss any and you know of some of the events that are taking place, let us know so that we can add them to the list. But basically, we can put a bit more emphasis on, particularly on the cybersecurity one, which took place. This is the first substantial meeting of the open-ended working group, which took place in New York. As that is sort of a cybersecurity issue, and usually you hear me covering cybersecurity, so I'll take the floor for myself and briefly cover this event. For those of you that might have not been following, this is one of the two major fora for discussing cyber norms and rules and responsibilities of states and other actors in cyberspace within the UN, so the open-ended working group. And the first substantive meeting basically discussed the risks emerging from cyberspace, application of international law, rules, norms, confidence building measures, and capacity building, as well as ways to establish institutional dialogue as a continuous model. This time we had 70 countries speaking, which is still quite a valuable number of countries involved. We had several blocks of countries which presented their positions, such as non-aligned movement, the CARICOM, European Union, plus a couple of candidate countries and near neighborhood, and a couple of international organizations, in particular the ICRC, ITU, and UNODC. In a nutshell, the applicability of international law and the UN Charter in particular was reconfirmed by most of the, almost all the statements. And it was in a way underlined or reminded that the open-ended working group does not start from scratch. It starts from the work of the group of governmental experts, the GGE, which is a good signal that there is a continuation in this process. There was a lot of support for the norms that were and confidence building measures that were outlined in the 2015 report of the UNGG. The main question, the main focus of discussion was what should be the mandate of the open-ended working group. Of course, the resolution 7327, which established it, does say generally what is the mandate, but it seems like there is a more or less broad agreement that the open-ended working group should work particularly on implementing existing norms, rules, CBMs, and raise awareness about what has been done thus far. There were a couple of practical proposals, like particularly the one of Mexico, which was praised, which suggested a number of national measures to follow up on the agreed norms and rules, and the UN mechanism that should synchronize the work of the state. Some states, of course, particularly the Shanghai Cooperation Organization group, still see the open-ended working group as possibly the body which should be turning the rules and norms into a legally binding international instrument or treaty. Some of the main threats were identified in cyberspace. Again, cybercrime, cyberterrorism, weaponization of cyberspace. Yet the scope of possible thematic coverage of these discussions continues to be expanded to some extent, or at least the suggestions. So some of the suggestions were that the open-ended working group should also work on the critical internet resources and internet governance to some extent, the information and data, both security and privacy and surveillance, development aspects, terrorism, and also artificial intelligence was lightly mentioned. A particularly new topic which emerged was put on the agenda by China, Iran, and India primarily, which relates to the securing the supply chain and preventing countries to misuse the ICT as a leverage in day-to-day politics, which is sort of probably the response of the Huawei case, the sanctions on Iran, India's position on global competition, and so on. And there is a clear initiative of the open-ended working group to discuss developing a permanent international mechanism. That's its mandate in a way. There'll be a lot of open questions whether the GGE, the future of the group of governmental experts, is seen as part of that mechanism and how this is going to look like. The detailed substantive reports from the open-ended working group is available on Diplo's website, on the Digital Watch website, so you can run through, and also the Digital Watch dedicated webpage on the GGE and open-ended working group has is following all of that and has updates on the open issues and what's happening. A couple of other interesting events in September. Well, all of them are very interesting, but we can't follow on all of them. The forthcoming, or just starting, Sustainable Development Impact Summit in New York. We'll hear a little bit more on that soon from Jovan once we turn into the topics. We'll hear a bit more on sustainable development. And of course, the UN General Assembly general debate of the 74th session is starting in New York today. And we will, as always, analyze the speeches and look for mentions of the member states related to technology, data, digital policy, and so on. And we'll provide some findings in our September newsletter. Moving on to what are the main developments in September. As always, we look into the sort of a barometer where we try to see the pressure produced by certain topics in a way. As I mentioned, the global IG architecture will somewhat be under pressure because of the General Assembly debate. But then we can move to sustainable development, and there are several reports related to sustainable development coming from the ITU, UNCTAD, and so on. So I leave it there to Jovan, or I pass the floor to Jovan, to let us more about what are the trends when it comes to sustainable development and particularly the events which are around. Jovan?
Thank you. Thank you, Vlada. It's great to participate in today's briefing. And just a quick note on SDGs. Those of you who know me quite well from my research and studies know that I've been a bit both enthusiastic about SDGs and broader concept, and a bit skeptical about overall rhetorics which is built around the SDGs. By spending 1 year at the UN, I realized that all broader development philosophical potential of SDGs, and they're seriously underutilized. SDGs will be today on the agenda of the high-level segment in New York, and they are basically discussing how to accelerate actions towards achieving SDGs by 2030. As you know, deadline is 2030, Agenda 2030 is the context for SDGs. There are many actions, policy and other proposals, but what we have been trying to see how digital technology can help implementation of SDGs. And in the brainstorming, we thought of using the term putting the SDGs or having SDGs on digital steroids. As you can imagine, it created a lot of interesting debates and concerns and complaints and disagreements, but we thought of using it exactly to provoke discussion, how digital technology can help implementation of SDGs. As you know, SDGs are very shy on digital technology. There are only a few references. There is no any specific sustainable development goal on digital issues. And there are 3 points that we hope they will discuss, some of them this week in New York. The first one is more active use of digital tools, access to the networks, broadband, new apps, AI, for achieving SDGs in the field of health, gender equality, inclusion. This is the first, use of new tools. The second point is a new use of new data for monitoring implementation of SDGs. And the sort of innovation is a suggestion that SDGs could be used as a guardrail for development of artificial intelligence. AI and tech communities worldwide are in search for ethical codes and some sort of guardrails to ensure that what they develop serve the core needs of humanity. SDGs being some sort of codification of these core values and priorities of humanity could serve as a useful guardrail. And we will have very soon the blog post explaining these three elements. In brief, big meeting in New York, concern about slowdown in the realization of SDGs, discussion about adding some sort of steroids. Our suggestion is to have quite strong boost coming from digital sphere. Over to you, Vlada.
Thank you, Jovan. The title of SDGs and steroids is quite descriptive. Moving on to other key topics of this month. So, as we mentioned, security was also under high pressure. Not only the open-ended working group, but again, number of attacks and leaks around the world, from Wikipedia to Ecuador and many others. Moving on to e-commerce and the internet economy, we'll hear a little bit later more from Arvin on cryptocurrencies. But in the meantime, there were a couple of antitrust investigations and initiatives in the US and EU. When it comes to digital rights, again, a little bit later within our trends, we'll hear more from Marilia on the developments on the gig economy and the labor rights. When it comes to jurisdiction was not that high under pressure this month. And then probably what's worth mentioning is again the AI. And there we have at least 75 countries, the report which says that at least 75 countries use artificial intelligence surveillance technology. US Air Force publishes the AI strategy. The UK court rules facial recognition used by police lawful. We have some developments in Morocco when it comes to data protection authority, but we'll hear more on that in the regional updates later on. Moving on to the three trends that we, in a way, distinguished in September. And we'll start with the future of work, talking about the mixed rules and the rules of the gig economy workers and labor. So I'm passing the floor to Marilia to guide us through the trends in this area of September. Marilia, floor is yours.
Thank you, Vlada. So actually, in the month of September, two companies that we know a lot from previous briefings, Uber and Lyft, have been in the spotlight again following a very important legislation that had been approved by the state of California, entitling gig workers to employment rights. The bill will not be a magic wand that will transform workers into employees from day to night, but it clarifies and codifies a three-step test that existed before. And this test departs from the assumption that all workers are employees. It will be up to the companies to prove that these workers are actually contractors, independent contractors, if they establish these three-step tests and they establish that the workers do accomplish this test. The test is based on three conditions. The first one is that workers need to be completely independent from the authority of the companies in the contract itself. And in fact, the second condition is that workers need to be to work on the site independent from the platform. So they need to have a business. And the third condition is that this business needs to be in the same line of trade that the company is hiring them for. So as we can see, it does set the bar much higher for companies to prove that the workers are actually independent contractors. And this decision will have a lot of implications. So California, as we know, is a large state and is a trendsetter. There are other states in the US that are considering to establish similar laws following California, and New York is one of them. after the AB5 bill, which is the name of the bill, has been approved, there are several democratic candidates for presidency that have come forward and have supported clearly the bill. And probably this will be something important in the campaign as well. For companies, the consequences will be important because that means that if companies fail to establish the test, the drivers pass the three-step test, they will need to be given employment rights. This means that the drivers will have rights to minimum wage and sick leave and vacations, for instance, and this is really not how the situation is today. For clients, the situation may change as well because Uber has already announced that probably the increase of costs will be passed on to clients, so they will pay an average of 30% more for the rides. And for drivers, Uber also says that the situation gets worse because drivers, they have a lot to gain from the gig economy, from the flexibility that it offers, and probably these conditions will change in the future. Of course, no one has spoken to the drivers themselves, so we don't know yet what the position they have on this new law. Uber said that they are confident that the drivers will pass the three-step test. They are ready to go to court and to fight this legislation. Actually, what will happen when the law takes effect on January 1st is that Uber will not reclassify the drivers, and they will probably wait for court decisions for cases to be taken to court, and for a court decision, for instance, to oblige them to reclassify drivers. And if it happens, the company already announced that they have put in place sort of a contingency plan, and they have put aside $30 million in case they need to pay benefits to the drivers. And we will see how this will unfold next year when the law comes into effect on the 1st of January. But interestingly enough, at the same time, this month that has been a very complete different decision coming from Brazil. The Brazilian Superior Court has examined the case and has decided that Uber drivers are actually independent contractors. They are not employees. And the court has based its decision on the fact that the drivers they work on a flexible schedule. They are free to manage their own drives. And this has been judged as an appeal coming from a local court that has formally decided that the drivers were actually employees, and the decision was completely reverted by the Supreme Court. So what we can see from these cases is that there is still uncertainty with regards to how courts and parliament see the gig economy and how they classify workers within the gig economy. And there's a patchwork of different regulations and court decisions that are emerging, and that of course will bring uncertainty to the drivers themselves and to the companies that are operating under the gig economy. Just to say that the decision that the law in the US does not apply only to the gig economy, so it does apply to a large number of sectors, translators, hairdressers, independent medical staff has been fighting this law or trying to declassify themselves from this law, but the law does focus a lot on the gig economy, and it brings effects on those that participate, the apps that participate in the gig economy. Thank you, Vlada, over to you.
Thank you, Marilia, and thanks particularly for outlining what could be the consequences for both the workers on one side and the consumers as well. As you mentioned that, well, at least they say that the cost could raise up to 30%. It's better we should believe that or not, but that can impact the economy. Thanks a lot, Marilia. Certainly the floor is open always, all the time for comments, and then we'll get back to Q&A once we run through the trends. Moving on to the second trend, which we identified this month. Again, it's not easy to identify trends. There are a lot of things happening. We always try to somehow put on the spotlight a couple of issues. Second one is Libra and cryptocurrencies. Libra has been under focus for quite some months already, and we have been extensively following on that in the briefings and the newsletters. We'll continue to do so. So I pass the floor now to Arvin, who has been following that. Arvin, what's new when it comes to Libra and controversy? For yours.
Thank you, Vlada. Hi to all. Hope you can hear me well. Well, as you said, Vlada, there was a dynamic summer around the Libra and the proposed cryptocurrency Libra from Facebook. And it continues to this autumn and further in October, and of course we will cover all of this. Well, as we mentioned from the event, on an event page, there was two big events on. First was the OECD Blockchain Development Summit, and the second one was the meeting of the Eurozone finance ministers in Helsinki. So those two meetings actually brought a bit more clarity on how will European and EU handle Libra and regulation. Regarding the Paris meeting, OECD Blockchain Development Summit, which was on 12th of September in Paris, we heard from the French Minister of Finance, Bruno Le Maire, that France and EU Ministers of Finance cannot authorize the development of Libra on European soil, which is a quite firm statement, saying the minister said that there are many uncertainties around Libra, so the first step for EU will actually be to stop and cannot authorize development of Libra in EU. Following that meeting, a few days later, there was a meeting of Eurozone finance ministers in Helsinki, and again, French Minister of Finance, now together with the German counterpart, German Minister of Finance, issued a joint statement on Libra regulation, saying that virtual currencies can pose a serious threat to consumers, and that France and Germany consider Libra project, but they still need to have a lot of inputs from Facebook and others in order to clarify the idea behind the cryptocurrency. In that light, Libra was issued an immediate response to this firm stance from EU, saying that they will not launch Libra until they have a full regulatory compliance with the EU laws, and also said that they will, of course, find the best solution together with regulators, and they're committed to work with regulatory activities to achieve a safe, transparent, and consumer-focused implementation. So what basically means is that all of the financial institutions in EU and the general financial institutions at large, like Financial Action Task Force, are looking into the ways to implement know your customer procedures and anti-money laundering procedures into the future Libra developments or Libra release. On the other side, Libra decided that they're going to push for this, they're going to go for this announced date for the delivery, which was in early 2020, and they're hoping they're going to have some kind of compromise with the regulatory bodies until then. Provoked by Libra, of course, we heard in this week or in this past month, we heard two announcements of national cryptocurrencies as a response to Libra's plans. China is announcing that they are in a final phase of launching their crypto yuan, actually a cryptocurrency which will replace money supply in China and be controlled via blockchain. On that step, also European central banks was encouraged to work on an issue around possible public digital currency solution for the European Union. So this field is developing, and of course we will follow up with any other updates. Thank you, Lara.
Thank you, Armin. As usual, very interesting coverage. If anything we can learn from this is that probably this is one of the rare technologies that we have a discussion before, and discussion about policies and regulation in a way ex ante before technology came into application, which is, I think, a good sign. And then secondly, it is interesting that in spite of all the warnings by many states, Facebook continues to go for looking into options for Libra, and discussing with regulators. So maybe we will see some sort of a positive example of a dialogue between technology companies and governments on this case. We'll follow that closely, as you mentioned, and also during the next month's briefings, as well as during within the newsletter this month and onwards. Thank you, Erwin. Again, moving to the third trend that we identified. Of course, if anyone has further questions or comments on Libra, feel free to post, and we'll get back to that soon. The third trend of this month is the new digital ID programs that will be rolled out and are being rolled out across around the world. So I pass the floor to Katarina, who has been following closely on the developments. Katarina.
Yeah, thank you, Vlada. So for this month, it's really interesting because we've seen a surge in announcements regarding digital identity programs, and most of them will be operational next year, so in 2020. We collected 4 examples relating to Malaysia, Singapore, Dublin, and Catalonia. So Malaysia will have a national digital identity system. It's mobile phone based, and their main argument is it will help people not to have to carry multiple forms of identification. Everything will be one app, one identity app. Singapore also, we see a national identity program. It's also phone based. And here there are various applications linked to this particular program. So it's about identification, it's about authorizing online transactions, and it's about signing legal documents. And obviously this kind of spills over into Maria's topic on e-commerce and will be an important factor there. Then the Irish city of Dublin, again, digital ID program for the city. And here in particular, it's about access to services. It's about registering for public events, and it's about access to facilities. Last but not least, the Catalan region in Spain. It's a bit different because they emphasize that they have a decentralized digital identity project. It's based on blockchain. And their key point is that users will have the autonomy to decide which entity and who gets to see what regarding their digital identity and regarding the various elements of that digital identity. Overall, there are a couple of considerations that come out of this overview. First, most of them are, or all of them are mobile phone based. We see some application of blockchain technology. What we also noticed is that many of these systems can be replicated in other countries. And then going back to what Johan said, this might be really important for the SDGs and particularly in terms of financial inclusion. 3 issues we want to highlight. First, who is left behind if this technology is mobile phone based? Is there a group of people who might be left behind because of that? Again, questions of data security, as they often come up in these types of situations. Questions of data collection and surveillance, in particularly by governments. And here, obviously, the important question is, are human rights safeguarded or are human rights being violated? Overall, we will see many developments related to digital identities as we move towards the end of 2019, and then as we move into the implementation of these programs that I just outlined. And we will see quite a number of additional programs. I'll stop here. Happy to take questions because I think there's a lot to be discussed around these issues. But for now, over to Vlada.
Thank you, Katarina. Seems like the trend is there. We are seeing more and more countries to start testing the ID programs. You outlined probably the 2 most important things. One is the security of data, the other one is privacy, and we've seen even Estonia had some challenges with that. We'll see how the others go. What might be comforting is that countries start recognizing these threats and risks, and a particularly interesting case that you mentioned was the blockchain technology implementation in Catalonia, which, well, someone is thinking about giving the autonomy over users' data to users themselves. Let's see how this is going to work. Again, questions, so the floor is open for any questions for Katarina. In the meantime, while you go with questions or comments or on any of the topics, we are wrapping up this formal part, the first part on global updates with what's coming in October. So again, there is a number of interesting events. We have outlined only a couple of them. If you think there is anything missing that's important for October, November, December, of course you can take a look always at the events list on the Digital Watch website. Let us know, and we gladly add to the list. What's coming in October, the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise has its annual meeting. It will be in Addis Ababa with a number of interesting discussions around issues such as the norms developments, the cybersecurity strategies, cybersecurity standards, capacity building, cybercrime, and so on. The World Trade Organization Public Forum in Geneva, then the RIPE, the regional registry which deals with the IP numbers, has its annual meeting in Rotterdam. The WIPO conference in Geneva, the European Telecommunication Standard Institute, which has its IoT week in France, and the National IGF in Italy, which are taking place in October. When it comes to our part, GIP and Diplo, what you can expect is end of September, there will be the next edition of the Digital Watch newsletter. So watch up on the Digital Watch website for the new newsletter. It's a good reading material for the morning coffee or evening relaxed time. We will be present at the World Trade Organization Public Forum in Geneva at the session on trade norms on access to the source code, which is on 10th of October. So if you happen to be in Geneva, join us. And then on the Diplo site, what might be of interest to you also is that the next round of online courses, the autumn courses, are starting. I think applications for some of them are still open. You might still grab a place. If you're interested, we have the course on cybersecurity, artificial intelligence policy, and the digital commerce course in Geneva. So the first two are online. The third is for Geneva audience and generally Geneva. And plus, of course, the deadline to apply for masters in contemporary diplomacy with specialization in internet governance. I still think this is one of the only, or at least very rare programs, master programs in IG. If you happen to be interested or you know someone, let us know. The next policy briefing that we are going to conduct is 29th of October, again, the last Tuesday of the month. So pencil it already and save the date. And with that, I think we can move on to the Q&A. Before we move to local hubs and the regional perspectives. Let me run through the questions and comments that we might have had thus far. So here are some comments that we received, but please go on with that if you wish. Pavlina mentioned and updated, and thank you, Pavlina, for that jurisdiction was quiet until today. On our barometer, it was moderate. That the European Court of Justice decided on the right to be forgotten de-indexing, stating that de-indexing needs to be undertaken in EU, in European Union only, not globally, which is quite an decision and it will impact the trends. We will certainly cover that in the newsletter that we're working on. So stay tuned also on the Digital Watch website in the updates section. The second comment is from Deidre. She says the East Caribbean Central Bank is also considering digital currency. That's probably the update also for Arvin and for other colleagues. And then Richard Hill mentioned that the Swiss Parliament has just passed a law to implement digital ID. Some NGOs are considering launching a referendum against the law because the production of the cards is partly outsourced to the private sector. That is more or less it. And then, of course, there is a comment from Rashi, who would love to learn more about digital identities. Kat, do you want to reflect briefly on how our colleagues can learn more on that while I run through a couple of other comments in the chat? Kat.
Okay. I mean, the biggest part on these updates is obviously our Digital Watch Observatory, where you find updates on 7 baskets of topics in internet governance relating to everything, literally from security all the way to economic issues and social issues. So that's probably the first stop, and we can put the link for the website again in the chat. I can also put my email, which I'm going to do in a second. And then that's 2 ways of continuing discussion. On Diplomacy EDU, we also have a blog that's really useful to continue the conversation. For example, there we will have a blog post on SDGs and digital by our very own Jovan Kubalia, who reflects on these issues that he mentioned in his intervention a bit more. I think that's it. Vlada, do you have anything else in mind?
Thank you.
Vlada.
Yes, Jovan, go ahead.
Vlada? Maybe just a quick comment in preparation for our next session. Essentially, what we will monitor carefully are the signals that are coming in the field of digital policy. As you know, the whole field is in the movement. It is more or less visualized like a kaleidoscope moving in all directions, and we are trying to pick up the signals from the speeches in General Assembly, from media, from articles, from what was mentioned today. There was sometimes these signals are weak, or those that we mentioned today are relatively strong on AI, on internet governance, on identities, but there are some weak signals that we'll try to pick up. And let me put my old hat, and I would like to invite all of you to join various initiatives on the implementation of the recommendation of the high-level panel, which is still the only, let's say, global international collection of ideas close to the question of digital and internet governance. Therefore, there will be a few initiatives in this field, especially in build-up for the Internet Governance Forum in Berlin. Over to you, Vlada.
Thank you, Jovan. In the meantime, I also found out that Nigel mentioned that, of course, the ICANN meeting in Montreal is coming, and Glenn reminded that the North American School of Internet Governance in Montreal, back-to-back with the ICANN meeting, will also take place. Thank you both for the updates. I think it's important to add to the list of events. Final question to Marilia. Do you want to add anything before we move to the regional updates? Okay, good.
Thank you.
You can all continue sharing your thoughts in the chat. In the meantime, we are running through the local hubs and regional perspectives, and we have learned thus far that we can hear very interesting cases from the regions that we cover. So we are starting with the updates from Asia. Firstly, we'll have Sita Lakshmi, who will provide some updates from the Asian continent. Sita will update on the internet shutdowns in Papua, on the 5G developments in Cambodia. So, Sita, the floor is yours.
Hi, greetings from Jakarta. My first update is about internet access shutdown. Government of Indonesia shut down the internet access in Papua in August, and from September 5th, the internet access in Papua has slowly restored. The internet blocking started as a series of angry demonstrations continued to break out since August in West Papua province cities. Indonesia Information Ministry said the decision to temporarily block the internet was meant to accelerate the process of restoring security and order situation in Papua and its surrounding areas. The order stood until the situation in Papua returned to being conducive and normal. This decision received a vigorous response from the Indonesian citizens and also United Nations. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said she was disturbed by the violence unfolding in Papua. She encouraged the authorities to engage in dialogue with the people of Papua on their aspirations and concerns, as well as to restore internet services and refrain from any excessive use of force. My second update is from Cambodia. Cambodia wants to be the first country in ASEAN deploying 5Gs. Major telco companies in Cambodia, such as Smart Axiata and Cellcard, are rolling out 5G base stations backed by Huawei technology and ZTE. CEO of Smart Axiata explained that equipment of Smart 5G project in the capital of Phnom Penh was being set up and the field tests were almost finished. He said Smart will use next generation tech from Huawei, which also supplied the gear for its existing 4G networks. Previously, Medphone, one of the major telecom companies in Cambodia, also signed an agreement with Huawei to deploy 5G infrastructures. Telecommunication regulator in Cambodia said that the Cambodia is a free market, thus the firms are not barred from working together. Cambodia do not bar any source of technology, and it is dependent on the operators themselves to choose their technology. He added that Huawei devices are rising in popularity among Cambodians, and the third after Apple and Samsung. Thank you. That's my update.
Thank you, Sita, for the updates. Next, we move to Wanda Perez, who will highlight the developments from the Caribbean region. Wanda will inform us about the Google's Caribbean School of Data and Suriname's efforts in digital transformation. Wanda, over to you.
Hello, everyone. With a coverage of 30.6 US million, the World Bank approved a regional health project to improve regional coordination and resilience for public health emergencies and extreme weather events in 4 member states of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS. Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be the beneficiary countries. The project will finance critical renovations in telecommunications, electrical safety, lighting, and other critical areas. The Caribbean Public Health Agency and the OECS Commission will coordinate regional activities, including establishing well-coordinated preparedness plans and strategies. On the other hand, Google and the Caribbean Open Institute, COI, have joined forces to help reduce the digital divide in the region, launching together the Caribbean School of Data, an educational initiative. Google will support the COI to deploy Caribbean School of Data, which will develop a comprehensive and sustainable data literacy program for underserved populations in Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Guyana, Haiti, St. Lucia, and Puerto Rico. The aim is to generate greater awareness, competencies, and capabilities around the data science, training at least 1,500 disadvantaged youth in topics ranging from data literacy to advanced management skills, visualization, integration, and data analysis, aligned with the labor market over a period of 2 years. From the Dominican Republic, this was Wanda Perez.
Thank you, Wanda. Moving on to the Middle East and North Africa region, where we have Hanan Boujemi. Hanan will update us about the developments in the Middle East fintech sector and other trends from Middle East and North Africa region. Over to Hanan.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hanan Boujemi, and I will be bringing to you Diplo briefing for the month of September 2019. The Middle East financial technology companies will raise more than $2 billion in venture capital by 2022, according to a report by the Washington, D.C.-based Milken Institute Center for Financial Markets. The fintech sector in the region is growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 30%, and it will boost the funding from $80 million raised by 30 firms in 2017 to over $2 billion from 465 fintech firms in the Middle East. The report states that the MENA region represents only 1% of the fintech investment globally. The demographics of the region and the region's geographic position is a gateway linking east with west that are favorable when it comes to the growth and the development of the fintech. Now, platforms focusing on payment space in particular are big winners in the region. Governments from the Gulf countries particularly are maximizing their efforts to diversify economies away from the oil industry, and they are trying to establish a welcoming legal and regulatory environment for the fintech industry. Finally, according to a report from ClearTrip and Flying, mobile usage dominates searching and booking travel in the Middle East. The online travel agency has seen a 76% rise in the number of bookings conducted on mobile phones. The top growth in the first half of this year came from Kuwait and Oman, with 287% and 181% respectively when compared to the same period last year. In Saudi Arabia, more than half of the transactions conducted are made on mobile phone, thanks to the country's high smartphone penetration rate. The overall travel market in the Middle East is expected to reach a whopping $100 billion in gross bookings value by 2022. That's all from me this time, and thank you for your attention. See you soon.
Thank you, Hanan. And at the end, we will hear from Jacob Odame-Biden with the updates from African continent. Jacob will update us about Africa's first connected cars, development from Tanzania and Kenya. Jacob, please go ahead.
Good morning, this is Jacob Odame-Biden, and I bring you the regional updates for Africa for the month of September 2019. I begin from South Africa, where a news report has shown that Toyota Motor South Africa has made a major breakthrough towards the realization of their Internet of Things strategy in Africa by introducing an in-car Wi-Fi solution for all their new Toyota and Lexus motor vehicles in South Africa. The innovation, which is made possible through a partnership with Vodacom and Ultra Netstar, provides a major extension features to the My Toyota Connect app. According to the report, TSMA President Andrew Kirby highlighted the importance of the partnership as strategic to the realization of Toyota's vision, which has seen them transitioned from an automotive to a mobility solutions organization. The partnership also aligns with Vodacom's vision of being a leading IoT solutions provider. We now go to Kenya, where, according to reports, Facebook in a special launch has announced a program that will train and equip SMEs with technologies and digital tools to make them productive and grow sustainable businesses in Kenya. The program, which is being implemented in partnership with World International, aims to train 3,000 SMEs on how to connect with their customers and create a more awareness about their businesses online. The program will target businesses located in Nairobi, Kisumu, Nakuru, and Mombasa cities in Kenya. The program will be available as a 5-hour workshop and will commence from the week of 23rd September 2019. According to the report, Mercy Indegwa, Facebook's head of public policy East Africa, speaking at the launch, said entrepreneurship plays an integral role in driving Kenya's economy and providing economic opportunities for Kenyans. That will be all for Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob. It was quite interesting, and I always enjoy to listen what are the key topics and trends around the world, from internet shutdowns and 5G to digital transformation to fintech to capacity development. And after this quick run around the globe, we are coming to an end of our September briefing. One final reminder again, so this month's Geneva Digital Watch newsletter will be available for download on the observatory, and as Kat reminded, observatory is dig.watch. By the end of this week, the direct link will be dig.watch/newsletter. Thank you again for participating in today's briefing, and see you again at the end of October, last Tuesday. Pencil it now and don't forget it. Thank you for